Hey y'all, welcome back. In today's video I want to cover water treatment in the backcountry. First starting with the why it's important to treat, and then covering some of the different methods in doing so. And at the end, I'm going to give some tips on water in general for through hiking. So starting with the why, I'm sure many of you know that it's because we don't want to get sick. Water sources vary throughout the world, and while a source may seem clear, it's impossible to see the microscopic pathogens that get us sick. And while some sources might be perfectly fine to drink as is, for example, even though it's not the best practice, I usually don't treat spring water that I can see coming straight from the ground or out of a pipe spring. But if we want to be 100% sure, the only true way to know that our water is safe to drink is to treat that water. So what are some microscopic pathogens that we have to be worried about in our drinking water? Well, the first one is the one that most people talk about, and that's Giardia. Giardia is a protozoan parasite that comes from drinking untreated water that has fecal matter in it from an animal that was carrying the parasitic disease. One of the main culprits of this shitty water is cows, which can be quite abundant along some of the long trails in the United States. So we want to be extra cautious around those sources. Symptoms of Giardia can include diarrhea, abdominal pain, and nausea. And while treatment might not always be necessary, it can usually resolve itself in 2 to 3 weeks. On a through hike, it's a little bit different because that 2 to 3 weeks, while it would be very expensive to wait it out in town, while you're hiking, the Giardia can lead to increased dehydration. I had Giardia on the PCT, and it was not the funnest of experiences. After eating or drinking, I would find myself having to run into the woods after like 5 minutes, so I could hardly keep anything down. Luckily, I was able to get into Bishop, California a day or two after I started showing symptoms. And I was able to get some antibiotics, and it was knocked out within 24 hours and was able to eat whatever I wanted again and get back on trail the next day. Another protozoan cyst is Cryptosporidium, which also comes from fecal matter in the water. These two protozoan parasites make up for 80% of waterborne illnesses. Other things to be mindful of are bacteria like E. coli and Salmonella, which also come from fecal matter in the water. So how do we get the gross stuff out of our water? Well, there are many different methods, and everyone's going to have their own personal preference. I'm going to cover a few and tell the pros and cons of each. The first one I'm going to go over is heating your water. Heating your water or boiling your water is one of the oldest and most effective ways to treat your water. But it's not the most efficient way, having to wait so long for the water to boil and to have to carry extra fuel while you're on trail. Those are both negatives. And also, you won't be able to enjoy like the instant gratification of cold mountain spring or stream water, which is one of my favorite things about backpacking. It is important to note that heating your water will kill all the viruses, bacteria, and protozoans that might be in your water almost immediately after reaching boil. It is good practice to wait 1 minute just because of the variances in what people may think is boiling and what's actually boiling. So just let it get to a rolling boil, wait a minute, and then you're good to go. So if you're using untreated water to cook your food or make your coffee, make sure you wait that 1 minute after you're getting a rolling boil. Anything else is overkill. But pouring untreated water into your mac and cheese or something like that may still lead to you getting sick. Another method, which I don't have too much experience with, is ultraviolet light, which requires pretty clear water for the light to shine through and kill the different viruses and bacteria that are inside your water. Now, this method is fairly quicker than most actually, and doesn't take too much effort to perform. I haven't really ever done it or tried it because I don't really want to trust something that requires batteries or that might break easily on trail. I rather trust something a little bit more hardy. So one of my preferred methods is filtering. Filtering comes in many different forms. One of the older ways, and it's still around, you just don't see it as much, is one of the pump filters. That's actually what I started the Appalachian Trail with back in 2011. Nowadays, you definitely see more of the squeeze filters or gravity filters, just because they're a little bit lighter and they don't always require as much effort. Pumps probably require the most, then the squeeze, and gravity really doesn't require any effort except gathering the water. One of the main benefits I feel about filtering water is that it allows you to have clean and cold mountain stream water basically immediately. You just fill up your bottle or your bag, screw on your filter, and then just drink straight from it. And you're getting cold water right away. Some of the downsides though is that you have to clean your filter. Depending on which one you have, there's different techniques. I'll talk about cleaning the Sawyer at the end of the video. Another thing you have to look out for is very cold nights while you're on trail. The filter may freeze and then crack, which would allow everything that you're trying to keep out to go through your filter and into your water without you knowing it. So if you are going to use a filter and you know you're going to have freezing temps, it's good practice to take your filter off, put it in a plastic bag, and then sleep with it to make sure it stays warm. Filters don't take care of all the viruses that might be in water, but they do a really good job of the stuff that we're going to see in the backcountry. Talking a little bit more specifically about the Sawyer systems, they're going to come in different weights, but that also comes in different flow rates. While this one right here might be quite a bit lighter, you can just tell that it's not as thick, so it won't allow as steady of a flow rate. Which over time, both of these are going to get quite a bit slower, especially if you don't clean it. That's why if you're on a thru hike and you have one of these, it's a good idea to clean it every time you get into town. A lot of thru hikers, while these will last a lot longer than a thru hike, and I think they say like 100,000 gallons or ever how much, it's a lot. Over time on a thru hike, they still slow down, so a lot of people will just buy a new one so that they can have that good flow rate again. So that's another downside, is the cost might be a little bit more having to replace them as you go on a thru hike. One cool thing about the Sawyer system though is that you can turn it into a gravity system just by screwing on whatever filter you have. I would recommend one of the larger ones, this one or the regular size, and then you have a gravity filter right away. And I usually use this if I'm going on a big trip with a lot of friends or something. I just fill it up and then hang it at the campsite. So that's really nice. Once again, if that flow rate's not there, it's going to take a lot longer. But you could just connect this to another bag and just have it filter into that if you wanted to. On to the last treatment that I'm going to talk about, and that is chemical treatments. And pretty much all of my thru hikes, AT, PCT, CDT, I always carried Aquamira. Aquamira is a chlorine dioxide solution. Some older methods that are still around today, some people use iodine and other people use straight up household bleach in small amounts in their water. Now both of those can create harmful byproducts where chlorine dioxide does not. Another benefit of chlorine dioxide is that it has a greater pathogen killing, being able to kill cryptosporidium, which iodine is not able to. Also with Aquamira, it doesn't leave as bad of a taste as iodine or bleach in your water. And with Aquamira, you have a very light and very easy to use water treatment system, and you don't have to worry about anything going wrong like you might have to even with a filter, a UV light, or a stove for boiling your water. So it's one of my favorite ways to treat water. It's just simple and easy to use. It takes a little bit longer maybe than filtering, but it's just right there. You don't have to worry about it failing. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to decide what works best for the trip that you might be going on. You got to take into account number of people, weather conditions, what the water sources are going to be like. So like I said, it just depends. So just some general tips about water for a thru hike. This one might seem like a no-brainer, but make sure you know where your next water source is. This is definitely very important for the PCT and CDT. AT maybe not as much because you're crossing water a lot more frequently, but on the other two you might be having long stretches with no water, so you want to know how much water you need to carry between those stretches, and it varies between person. I usually did 1 liter for every 5 miles, but then you also take into account if you're going to be cooking dinner or something like that. And with the PCT and CDT, and even the AT some, definitely not as much, there are water caches between those very dry spots, but it's important not to count on those water caches. One, they might not be there, and then you're halfway through this long carry and you're out of water because you were counting on that water. And also, it's just not nice to be that guy, carrying 2 liters when everyone else is carrying 5 or 7 liters. And, you're filling up there and kind of taking advantage of the people carrying up hundreds of gallons of water to these places in their trucks and whatnot, and just being really nice. So while I have never ran into a dry cache, I don't believe, on either of my trips out west, it's just, it's not good practice to rely on those caches. With that being said, a method that a lot of people use, I don't know the science behind it, but it makes kind of sense. So while you're at that source getting ready for that dry stretch, is to camel up and drink like an extra liter or 2 while you're still there to make sure you're plenty hydrated before you start that very dry stretch. In dry stretches, I usually carry, like on the PCT and CDT, I usually always had 2 32-ounce smart water bottles, and then I would also carry a 3-liter bladder. I really like this one. It's a little bit thicker than some of the other ones, which is nice because you don't have to worry about puncturing, but still fairly light and packs down small. One thing that you might not think about when you're thinking about treating your water, but it is to make sure your hands are plenty clean. Like I said, all of these diseases came from fecal matter in the water. So while it might be gross to think about, you might have something on your hands, or who knows what you might have on your hands. So always wash or sanitize your hand before eating, after going to the bathroom, also even before gathering water. Now, did I always do that? No, I can't say I did. But I also got Giardia on the PCT, and I got norovirus on the PCT, so I might not be the best example. So if you don't want to get sick at all, make sure you're treating your water and that you're cleaning your hands as often as you can. One thing to note, if you're using Aquamira or any other kinds of drops or tablets to treat your water, is that you want to make sure that the threads of your water bottle is clean after treating it. Because if you're filling up your water bottle like this, dirty water can get on these little ledges. So after your water's treated, you just want to turn it upside down and just squeeze a little bit out, making sure that that nasty water isn't still sitting on those threads. Going into cleaning your Sawyer is pretty simple. One pro tip, which I'm sure a lot of people know now, is that these sports caps on the smart water bottle can actually just go right in there, and you're able to filter it out like that. So that keeps you from having to carry one of these syringes. So it saves a little bit of weight and pack room. Yeah, so let me know what your favorite method of treating your water is. Do you treat your water, or do you just trust that it's clean because it looks clean? And let me know what you might want to see in the next video. Until then, hope you're able to get out on the trail. Well, maybe not with this COVID-19 stuff going around, but stay safe and stay healthy. See you next time.